Felt like we were stuck at a train station, and there was no train, no schedule, just waiting. So in October of 1999, I heard of this singles retreat, and of course I went to gain more knowledge in how to be content as a single Christian. And I met my husband, Steve, who has been in my life now for 14 years. He was the type of person that God knew I needed in my life. He's very persistent, would never be gone a day without calling me if he had to travel, and was just always there and reassuring. 2 months into our marriage, we started caring for, on weekends, his niece, Cheyenne, whose mother was not present in her life and who was at the time being raised by my mother-in-law. So over time, the more we took care of her, the more we decided we were wanting to have children of our own. So about 6 months into our marriage, we began to try and pray for children. And they didn't come, and they didn't come, and 2 years later, as we still kind of helped out with Cheyenne, God started pulling at our heartstrings to give her a stable home and a mom and a dad to love her. So we made the decision and approached my mother-in-law about taking her in and adopting her as our own child. And I used to think that I was put in her life to help her, but I think equally as I look back now as she's 16, that God also used her in my life to work on the insecurities and the perception that I needed to be perfect in order to be loved. And I had to over and over again work on letting her be imperfect and letting her know that I loved her despite her imperfections and despite the mistakes that she made in life. And I slowly began to realize that that's God's perception of his relationship with me. I called the doctor and went in to see, and they told me I had had a miscarriage. I didn't know about that pregnancy. And it opened up a whole can of doubt again. My husband continued to pray for a child. So did Cheyenne. She wanted desperately to have a brother or a sister in her life. It was harder for me to pray. Eventually, after tons of prayers just offered with no answer for a baby of our own, we finally decided to pursue adoption. Then 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant. And it was just confirmation to me again that God said, I had never left you. You were never alone. You didn't have to do it. I was here all along. And so I thought about it, and I thought, had I given up 6 months ago, I wouldn't have even had this child that we had prayed so much for, that I had given up on. Had I given up on the Lord, had I walked away from my marriage, then this child that we had prayed for so long would have never come into being. But God was saying, you know, you've been in my graces all this time. It's just not been the right time for you. That I love you, and you haven't had to do this on your own. I've already done this. I've already restored you. And that our child, this child, was a confirmation of that. It was like God reaching out to me and saying, I'm here. I'm not going to let you go through this alone. I'm not going to let you fall apart. Then on April 2nd, he was born, and I just remember saying a prayer to God when I saw him, and I could see that he was breathing, and everything was wonderful. And it was like, thank you, God. I understand your grace. I understand the gift. I thank you for your love and your blessing, and for loving me despite all my doubts and my fears about you and your love for me. Then the train arrives, and you step on with all your baggage, and it's exactly the train you were meant to take. God has arrived.